Hey guys, tonight we wander into an Edo-period garden, just as the moon lifts above the low, tiled rooftops. You feel the gravel crunch softly under your sandals, the kind of sound that instantly tells you you're somewhere old, careful, and quietly proud of itself. A faint mist hangs close to the earth, and the pines, short, wide, and shaped like brushstrokes, seem to glow from within. You probably won't survive a full day of Edo-Era manual labor, but for now you just breathe in the cool night air and pretend you're tougher than you actually are. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know your location and local time, because I love seeing this little nighttime community light up across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey. You're standing among black pine giants, their branches splayed outward like layered umbrellas. Moonlight softens everything, smoothing the harsh edges of the trunks and turning the needles into tiny silver threads. It's here, in this hush, that Edo gardeners preferred to begin trimming, slowly, patiently, and with a sense of ceremony. A mainstream historical fact slides in immediately. Edo-period gardens, 1603 to 1868, were often maintained according to strict aesthetic codes, many influenced by Zen monasteries and warrior households. Pine trees were prized for their longevity and their stubborn, almost heroic silhouettes. You step closer to one of the trees, and your fingers brush against the needles. They're cool and slightly waxy, releasing the faintest hint of resin. A quirky little tidbit whispers in, some gardeners believed pine trees listened better at night, an old superstition claiming that the sap inside was calmer and less upset by the day's heat. It's not scientific, obviously, but it's a charming thought. You almost imagine the tree raising an eyebrow at your touch, like, oh, you again. As you move around the trunk, the shadows shift. The moon climbs a little higher, revealing the gentle rhythm of the garden's layout. The stepping stones form a path that seems to float. The small pond, edged with moss, reflects just enough sky to look like a second moon pooling at your feet. And across the water stands a little wooden lantern. Needless now, because tonight the moon does all the work. Historians still argue whether gardeners truly preferred moonlight for practical reasons, like seeing a tree's overall shape more clearly, or whether it was mostly cultural symbolism, a quiet time when houses slept and the garden felt spiritually open. You can feel both explanations tugging at you because the moonlight is genuinely helpful, but the vibe is unbeatable. It's the kind of atmosphere that convinces you to do anything slowly. Even a modern smartphone screen feels like a rude intruder here. You crouch for a better look at a branch, and a soft breeze drifts by, carrying the smell of damp earth and late summer leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird gives a single, half-hearted chirp, like it forgot what it wanted to say. You smile. Even wildlife gets sleepy monologue brains sometimes. A single gardener from centuries ago could be standing exactly where you are, wearing a cotton kimono, hair tied back, quietly assessing which needles should stay and which should go. You imagine him giving you the side eye. Nice outfit, but your posture needs work. You ignore him politely and keep observing the tree, tracing the gentle curve of its branches. The garden seems to lean in with you, an embrace shaped by shadow, centuries of tradition, and the soft insistence of moonlight guiding every motion. You stay crouched for a moment longer, then straighten your back as you notice something laid neatly on a flat stone nearby, your tools for the night. In the dim silver glow, they look almost ceremonial. A pair of small pruning shears, a wooden bucket, a cloth wrap, and a curious rake-like implement with delicate metal prongs. You reach for the shears first. They feel cool, balanced, heavier than modern ones, but satisfying in a you could absolutely clip your own bangs with these, but please don't sort of way. A mainstream historical fact nudges in. Edo-era gardeners often relied on tools crafted by regional blacksmiths, sometimes using the same forging traditions that made swords. Not the dramatic katana-level glamour, more like the everyday, my uncle makes sturdy metal things version. But still, the craftsman shows. The blades open with a soft click, the kind of sound your brain automatically files under calming ASMR. But the real magic of these tools shows when you try them under moonlight. You lift a branch gently, feeling for the right cluster of needles. The light doesn't glare. Instead, it softens the edges, making it easier to see the overall silhouette of the pine. Less distraction, less fuss. And this is where one quirky fringe tidbit enters. Some gardeners claimed that if you listen carefully, snipping needles at night produced a more polite sound, less sharp, less aggressive, better for maintaining the garden's spiritual harmony. Is that objectively true? Probably not. But as you make a test snip, it really does sound kind of polite, like the tree says, "Thank you for your cooperation." You shift your grip. The tools feel almost alive in your hands, warmed now by your touch. There's a rhythm to the work. Lift, observe, snip, breathe. Lift, observe, snip, breathe. Every few moments you pause to listen, because hearing becomes half of your vision in the dark. You can't rely on bright daylight to outline every twig, so your ears pick up clues. The whisper of needles brushing each other, the faint rasp of your sleeve sliding across bark, the tiny thud of clipped needles landing in the bucket. Historians still argue whether Edo gardeners chose moonlit pruning because daylight hours were simply too busy, crowded with patrons, apprentices, and household chores, or because night work had a reputation for producing more controlled, meditative results. You can't decide either, but you feel the appeal. Silence stretches in every direction, the kind that lets your thoughts unfurl like fresh pine tips. You lay your hand on the tree trunk. The bark feels rough but warm, absorbing the day's heat. You reposition yourself, trying to mimic the steady motions of a historical gardener. Except, of course, your knees crack loudly, loud enough that an Edo-era worker would definitely give you the rookie look. You whisper shh at your own joints. They do not care. You continue trimming, noticing how the moon picks out subtle asymmetries. That's the trick. Edo gardeners didn't aim for perfect symmetry. They aimed for natural elegance, shapes that looked effortless, as if the tree had grown into a painting all by itself. Achieving that effortless look typically required hours of deliberate, invisible labor. It's the botanical equivalent of pretending you woke up with flawless hair. You try the rake-like tool next, running its delicate prongs gently through a cluster of needles. It separates them without tearing, letting you see which ones need removing. This tool, now rare, was once standard kit. Some say it doubled as a way to comb loose debris out of thick branches. Others, more poetically, claimed it allowed you to hear the tree breathe, because the sound of the prongs brushing through was softer and more sophisticated than the shears. You try it, and yes, the sound is different, like brushing the fur of a very patient cat who is judging you silently. The moon rises higher, your tools glinting softly, your hands growing more confident. This quiet ritual becomes less about gardening and more about communion between shadow, touch, and tradition. You can almost feel the centuries leaning in around you, nodding approvingly as you learn the language of night tools. You settle back onto your heels, feeling the cool earth through your sandals as the night deepens around you. The garden barely shifts, but something in the air changes, a subtle cue, the kind you only notice when you've been outside long enough for time to blur a little. You're starting to slip into the rhythm Edo gardeners lived by, a rhythm tied not just to moonlight, but to the entire cycle of seasons, rituals, and quiet expectations. A mainstream historical fact floats up. Edo gardeners followed a strict annual schedule for pine maintenance,
Mikiri in early summer, pinching off new shoots, Midoritsumi in mid-season, shaping and thinning, and Momiyage in autumn and winter, removing old needles to encourage air circulation. Each stage had its own timing, and some elite estates posted actual calendars instructing when each task should be performed. You imagine a stern head gardener tapping the chart like a school teacher. If you trim too early, the tree sulks. If you trim too late, I sulk. Right now, you're doing something between Midoritsumi and Momiyage, the in-between stage where a gardener evaluates the pine's character for the year. You lift a branch and notice how its new growth has settled. Longer on one side, shorter on another. This imbalance, far from a flaw, is what gives the tree personality. But shaping that personality isn't random. It follows rules old enough that apprentices memorize them the way modern kids memorize cheat codes. A quirky tidbit emerges as you ease another branch into the moonlight. Some gardeners claimed pines responded better if spoken to politely before seasonal work. You picture someone saying, "Good evening, elder pine. May I tidy your eyebrows?" And honestly, at this hour, it doesn't seem weird at all. You almost want to try it yourself. The tree's silence feels vaguely expectant, like it wouldn't mind the compliment. As you trim, your breathing syncs with the slow swaying of branches. It's that strange moment when manual work becomes a kind of meditation. But this meditation had rules. The apprentice system in Edo gardens was famously strict. You weren't allowed to touch pine needles unsupervised until you'd spent years sweeping paths, carrying buckets, and studying seasonal charts. Imagine doing 3 years of chores just to be promoted to needle plucker. You'd either become extremely humble or extremely good at sweeping. Historians still argue whether the strictness was about maintaining elite aesthetics or simply about power, masters protecting their techniques, much like tea ceremony schools or ink painting lineages. You can see both sides. These tree-shaping methods weren't just chores. They were subtle, almost artistic traditions, and protecting them felt like guarding family secrets. There were stories of gardeners passing down tiny techniques, like how to angle your wrist to encourage a branch to curve gracefully, as if they were treasured heirlooms. You pause and look up at the sky. The moon has shifted again, turning the pine's silhouette into something sharper and more intentional. This is when you finally notice a seasonal detail: the smell. Late summer pine resin thickens slightly in the heat and then cools at night, releasing a warm, calming scent. You breathe it in, feeling the garden wrap around you like a slightly prickly blanket. You continue your slow trim, branch by branch, thinking about those seasonal cycles. In spring, new buds appear like little green candles. In summer, they flare into tufts. In autumn, they mellow into soft clusters, ready to be thinned. In winter, the tree rests, bare enough for its architecture to show. The year moves, the tree shifts, and the gardener follows, always one step behind, quietly shaping what nature begins. As you clip a final needle cluster, you sense the weight of the season around you. It's not just about gardening anymore. It's about stepping into an ancient calendar that refuses to rush, no matter how impatient the world becomes. The garden teaches the pace, and tonight, under moonlight, you're finally starting to learn it.
You stretch your back again, quietly, because even your spine feels like it shouldn't disturb the night, and start making your way along the garden's winding path. The stones are cool beneath your feet, smooth from generations of sandals passing over them. A faint breeze lifts the edge of your sleeve, and you suddenly become aware of the world beyond the garden wall.
quiet alleys, shuttered homes, and the soft, rhythmic clack of distant wooden sandals. Even in an age without electric lights, Edo nights were never fully silent. You reach a narrow wooden gate and slide it open just enough to peek out. The street beyond is dim but not empty. A lantern flickers far away, carried by someone walking with unhurried purpose. And this is where a mainstream historical fact glides in. Edo streets were patrolled at night by yoriki and doshin, officers who made rounds to deter fire hazards and suspicious activity. Fire was the great fear of Edo, the city of paper walls, so nighttime caution was practically a civic religion. Gardeners working late often timed their pruning to avoid these patrols, because stopping to explain why you were snipping trees in the dark wasn't exactly anyone's idea of fun. You slip out anyway, following an imaginary Edo gardener who has done this 100 times before. He carries his tools wrapped in a cloth bundle tucked under his arm. You do the same, or at least pretend to. The street feels different from the garden, less serene, more watchful. The houses are quiet, but every closed sliding door feels like it has an ear pressed gently against it. In this city, privacy is a flexible concept. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind as you walk. Some neighborhoods believed that trimming pines by moonlight kept mischievous spirits away, especially those believed to cling to the rafters of old houses. The idea was that the spirits disliked tidy branches because organized trees attract organized homes. You can't help smiling at the mental image of a ghost crossing its arms grumpily, muttering, "Ugh, neat hedges again, unlivable." Whether anyone truly believed this or just enjoyed the story, no one can say, but it's the kind of tale that makes midnight streets feel charming instead of eerie. You continue walking, sticking to the shadows out of instinct. A dog barks somewhere behind you, one single, unimpressed woof that sounds like it regrets waking up for this. You whisper an apology to the dog, because why not, and keep going. The moonlight catches a small shrine at the end of the street, its tiny torii gate glowing faintly. Even here, the gardens matter. Tiny pines, barely knee-high, have been pruned into miniature versions of their grand garden cousins. You step closer, noticing that someone has trimmed these too, probably earlier in the evening. Historians still argue whether moonlit garden work became a polite custom simply because daytime in Edo was too crowded and chaotic, or because night hours matched the aesthetic ideals of subtlety and restraint. You can feel the truth leaning in both directions. The nighttime streets are calmer, cooled by the absence of the day's bustle. And there's a sense of decorum in working unseen, as if you're contributing to beauty without demanding credit for it. You approach the edge of a canal, watching moonlight ripple on the water. The reflections stretch and wiggle in a way that almost looks like handwriting, gentle brush strokes of light across the surface. You imagine an Edo gardener walking this same path after finishing a night's work, pausing here to rinse their hands in cool water and let their mind drift. You do the same, dipping your fingers, feeling the chill, the weight of the night easing across your shoulders. The patrol lantern you saw earlier reappears, closer now. You tuck yourself discreetly behind a wooden railing, not out of fear, but out of playful solidarity with gardeners of long ago who would have done the same. The officer walks by without noticing, humming off-key. You wait until the lantern fades around a corner, then slip back toward the garden, feeling oddly triumphant, like you've passed a secret initiation. As you re-enter the pines, their branches seem to welcome you back. You return to your work with a renewed appreciation for the quiet labor done while the rest of the city sleeps. unseen but deeply felt.
You return to the heart of the garden. Tools light in your hands, the night now fully settled as if it has chosen you as its quiet companion. The pines stand patient, their branches lifted ever so slightly by the gentle breeze, as though inviting you to step closer. The moon sits lower now, softer, its glow thinning to a pale wash against the sky. You kneel beside the tallest tree, the one whose posture has shaped your entire night, and feel the hush of something deeper settling in. A mainstream historical fact surfaces as naturally as breath. Edo aesthetics revolved around guiding, not forcing, natural forms. Principles like wabi-sabi, beauty and imperfection, yugen, mystery felt rather than seen, and shibui, subtle elegance. Pine trees, with their twisting trunks and irregular branches, were perfect canvases for this philosophy. You can see it now. Every curve you've encouraged tonight isn't about fixing the tree, but revealing the quiet beauty already winding through it. You lift the branch gently and realize you're no longer trimming for shape alone. You're trimming for feeling, for mood, for the way the silhouette will look at dawn or in rain, or when someone passes by half asleep and catches only the hint of its outline. And this is where the fringe tidbit slips in. Some old gardeners claimed certain branches held memories of past caretakers, insisting that shaping them respectfully helped maintain the continuity of the estate spirit. You rub the bark with your thumb, half believing it, half amused at yourself for believing it. Still, the tree does feel older than the night. You move around to the shaded side of the pine, where moonlight falls only in patches. Working in shadow forces you to rely on shape and intuition, the same way Edo gardeners did. The needles feel different under your fingers here. Cooler, faintly slick with nighttime dew. Your shears make a gentle ch-ch, precise and soft. You pause, listening to the way the sound fades into the air, and something inside you settles too. Historians still argue whether moonlight pruning was born from strict aesthetic doctrine or evolved from practical necessity. Limited daylight, rigid work schedules, high expectations from wealthy patrons. You feel both arguments swirling around you like drifting mist. The practicality is undeniable, but the beauty of this, of the shadows and the stillness, and the way the garden opens itself only at night, feels intentional, like an art form carved into the hours themselves.